Hello, fellow artists. Join me today while I share with you how I created this robin's nest using Duralar water-based medium. It's a Duralar film that holds water. What? I know. Been a watercolorist for a very long time and I never knew this existed. So I was very excited to try it and I'm super happy with the results. I'm also going to be checking out and sharing how I use the incredible white mask liquid frisket with the incredible nib. And I got to tell you, I really wish I found this nib sooner. Why, you ask? Because it has two ends. So one is kind of the size of a round brush, like a 6 or an 8, right? And this end is so cool because it is an angled edge here. And when I held it upright like that, I was able to get the finest lines, which is so hard to do when you're using Frisket. So I do use it a lot in my watercolor painting. So when I found this, I was like, oh my gosh, finally. So I demo this today in this bird's nest. Also Frisket Film to block out the egg so I could go really dark in the center and get my super dark values. For the paint, I use gouache with lots of water, beautiful spring colors. So let's get started. Hello, fellow artists. What I'm going to do here with Frisket Film is cut out the eggs and use them to block the area when I do the background for the nest in watercolor. What I have underneath is the Frisket Film. Okay, so you can see it's kind of shiny there in the back. So I'm going to use transfer paper to trace the eggs. So I have the Frisket Film, transfer paper, and the eggs, and I have a little stylist here. So what I'm going to do now is just trace the outside of the eggs. So let's see, there we go. So I have the eggs that I am going to cut out. So now I have my cutout of my eggs, and what I'm going to do now is cut a piece of Duralar, the archival, which is important, polyester film, that is a water-based medium. So yes, water-based medium for film. Is that so exciting or what? I cut a 6x6 size of the Duralar, and what I'm going to do now, just put a little one on there, a little tape there. I'm going to take my eggs and I'm going to put them pretty much right in the middle, just kind of eyeballing. Okay, so I'm just going to lift off the protective coating. I've got the eggs here, okay, that I cut out, and now I'm going to lay them down right about there, kind of at a little angle, I'd say. And there we go. You can see I have the Frisket Film on there on my 6x6 size of Duralar, water soluble. So let's get to painting. Okay, so I want to preserve some of this straw around here again so I can use my dark watercolor as a base, go really dark in the edges of the shadow of the eggs. So what I'm going to do to preserve some of the light and to make some hard edges is use the incredible white mask liquid frisket and also the incredible nib to use for the application. What I like to do is, instead of dipping my nib directly into the jar, I prefer to pour out a little bit, about as much as I think I'm going to need, into a separate container. Then that way this stays preserved And if this starts to dry, I can just add a little bit more on top. What I loved about this nib, first you dip it in water and then blot it. But what I loved about it is that it has two ends to it. So one you can see is what I'm using now for a point, but then also the other is like the other end is a sharp angle. And I was able to get some really super fine lines. It's hard to see in the video. I was like, finally. So I was impressed. After I was finished with the frisket, I basically just kind of peel it off the nib. For the outer part of the nest, for the dark layers, I'm using buff titanium gouache and a Van Dyke Brown from Winsor Newton. And I will also add, for a little color, the burnt sienna gouache. So you know they're all different brands. They're just kind of what I have. I just prefer the colors over the brands right now. All right, so this is a mixture of the buff titanium and Van Dyke Brown. You can see I put the dark right in the middle and right around the eggs for the shadow of the eggs. Then I add water as I branch out because that's a lighter value. And you can see the masking fluid that I have on the outer part of the nest, and just doing a little dark areas around the masking fluid, then adding some green. And I was really surprised at how this dried. It's amazing how this film actually does absorb water. And I did use my blow dryer, my craft blow dryer there, and it was totally fine. Some little areas where I had a lot of water and a lot of pigment took a little longer than the other to dry, but no big deal. It actually dried, which was very cool. So now you can see I'm going a lot darker. I'm using Van Dyke Brown, not much water. I'm working my values, going darker in the center, and sticking to the lighter on the outer edges. And here you go. You can see it's totally dry. Now I'm taking off the masking fluid with my firm eraser there. I forgot what it's called, but and look at that. That is just great. Now I do have white behind. This is on my whiteboard, behind taped to my whiteboard. So there we go. I did a couple little red splashes, and then I'm lifting up the eggs. Now a little paint did get under the eggs, but this was, I put a lot of paint down, and I still see those hard edges, which is great. So the masking film worked really well on this water soluble Duralar film. So totally impressed so far. Using cerulean blue with a touch of white gouache, I'm painting in the eggs, and I've got like a creamy consistency of my watercolor. Not a lot of water, just a nice creamy consistency because I want the eggs. I'm kind of going mid values first. So normally in watercolor we go light to dark, right? Well, you can go dark to light, because if you want, you can use some gouache or something more of, an opaque watercolor basically is what gouache is. And you can do your light over dark on this. It's really very cool, which is what I'm doing right here. This is white gouache, and I did it right over the blue, blending it in a little bit. I want the blue darker on the outside, right? Trying to get the curve of the egg. So on the top, I want to get that highlight of the egg. And you can see how it's, I let it dry a little bit. So that's what that was. I was like, it was pretty wet. It was just kind of like blending into each other. That's what happens on any watercolor paper anyway. If you get too much of a puddle, you just got to let it dry. So I let it dry, and I was able to put on a couple more layers. I'm using a separate film for my background. I wanted a really bright yellow behind the nest to kind of come through. So this is gouache, that's a yellow gouache. You can also paint on the back of this film. But I wanted to experience using two pieces together and see what would happen. So I did kind of just a fun, loose painting in the background. I got a robin in, little mama robin looking over her nest. And I really liked how the yellow, super bright yellow glow came through the nest. So you can kind of see it there. And this is mostly gouache with a lot of water. So I have my two Duralar water-soluble films here. I'm pretty happy with the background. And this is the nest that I cut out. And I am going to use modeling paste to connect the two. And I thought it would be kind of cool to have a little texture around the edges because it's definitely missing something around the edges of the nest. Don't have a sewing machine, otherwise I might do that. I did try some Mod Podge on a separate scratch piece, and I wasn't really happy with it because it's just kind of, it's milky. It's not really dry. It's not dry and clear, although it might. But I tried on my practice sheet, I tried the modeling paste here, and I kind of like the texture that I got from when I did my little practice. I'm going to go for it and put some modeling paste down. And this is pretty thick. It's kind of, I've had it for a few years too, so it's pretty thick. Now I have to make sure I like where the eggs are going to be. So here I go. I'm just going to start right over here. And I want the paste to kind of stick out a little bit. I want it to show because I want the texture. And I may not do around the whole area. I think this enough right here. We'll keep the this film on. So I'm going to leave it there. Grab a little more. And kind of just work my way around here. So it's just kind of something fun to do, something different. I think it's really important to branch out and try other art supplies and get different experiences, because it really does help you with your favorite medium, kind of understanding other mediums. All right, I'm kind of liking this. I would suggest working kind of fast though. Yeah, I'm kind of liking this. It kind of brings the two together. And I can paint over this paste. So I can I was thinking of putting some green around, on it for some leaves or some brown. Decided to go with some spring colors, with some yellows, some real pretty spring green here, which is a gouache, and of course a little flower. And here's the final robin's nest. Thank you, Grafix, for sending me this water-soluble Duralar. Had no idea it existed. I love it, and I definitely suggest anybody that loves gouache, watercolors, acrylics can totally use this medium. Happy painting, everybody!